Hey there everyone, for this week I'm going to go over quite a few different analysis tools in ArcGIS Pro. For the students in my course, I'm going to upload them individually. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, I probably ended up merging these videos together into one upload, and that's what you're seeing now. But with that, a lot of the tools we're going to get into are going to be the ones that we see in the analysis toolbar that fall under geoprocessing, most of the ones in here. So buffer, we've already gone over is summarized within. We've done a spatial join. I'll go over a couple of these again just to show you how to do it again with another data set. Clip. We're not going to get into the hotspot and that kind of analysis right now. We'll get into that in later weeks. We've done a join features based on table attributes. We'll get into intersect, union. We won't get into near yet. We'll get into most of these at another point. The near table is actually a really handy one. I'm not going to lie about that. I enjoy that. And for now, we'll also get into append. With that, you can combine data sets into one. So that's a pretty cool one as well. Merging is a pretty common one that we use as well. But with that, before we get into all of these, I want to go over kind of another way to select data. So we've gone over it, I've used it before, and you might need to use the analysis tools and the geoprocessing tools or something else in the toolbox over here. But with that, if you're trying to grab a quick number, and more often than not, I'm using a quick select by location type of approach, unless I need to export out files or create a new layer based on it. But with that, if I go to my map, and here you see, not surprised I'm in Little Rock, in the table of contents I have a variety of different crime set or data sets in it, from crime from January through September. You might wonder, well, why did I stop in September? For this data set in this year, this was data that was being presented at the ASC conference and needed to get it done and do some analysis before the actual conference. But with that, I also have rental units, bus stops, the bus lines, sidewalks, a street layer, police beats, or known as districts, and then we have land use data, and these are a bit older. Even the police beats have changed to current day, but it's a good analysis or a good approach to show you how you can use some different layer files with the geoprocessing tools. But a pretty common thing that we get into from a crime analysis standpoint is the presence of public transit. Oftentimes outside of large cities, it's going to be bus stops. With that, you can have other rail, tunnel, this train system as a whole in some of your larger cities. But for us here in Little Rock, or I guess people that live there now, I currently don't, you can see the distribution of bus stops throughout the city. Not shockingly, the downtown area has more stops. You can see kind of just the cluster out here. And as you go into different parts in the outskirts, you see fewer and fewer stops as you move away from the city center, the central business district. With that, typically what's argued is crime clusters or happens near bus stops or public transit, so you typically have more crime that occurs there. Well, we can do a quick select by location and see what that looks like. So if you remember, this is our crime data. So I identify here that it does have an offset. So this crime is not to this street center line. But what I mean by that, if I zoom in here, the crime has a 20-foot offset. So if I turn on the street layer, this is because I was using this data with census block group and track data. So to have the offset, it specifies which block group it is. If you do the center line and then you try to aggregate or do a count or join of, you can sometimes get double counts, which is problematic. So for this data set, there is an offset with that. So that's what the 20-foot offset means there. But with that, we can actually look and examine some of these relationships. So if I open the attribute table for our crime data, keep in mind this is all part 1 UCR crime data for Little Rock from January through September of 2018. With that, I'm not really interested in all types of crimes. I could be simply just interested in a subset of it. You can see here we have offense descriptions. So if you remember, we have select by attribute. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to select, and I'm going to make a subset of crime data that we're going to use then to see how many of those occur within a certain distance of a bus stop. So with that, select by attribute. Hopefully my computer's a bit quicker today. There we go. So I want to select from this table, new selection, and enter a new expression. And I want my offense description to equal, so I'm keeping that there. And then it's going to give us our drop-down values based on what's already in there. So it's filling in the values for us. Let's go ahead and look at robbery and see what that looks like. Hit apply. So out of the over 11,000 incidents, we have 259 robberies. Since I have these selected, I'm going to go ahead and export these. So I right-click, Data, Export Features. I want to save these as a separate layer. So with that, it's going to be robbery, example. Hit OK. And it's going to save that as a separate layer for me. You can see in the background, the ones that are kind of highlighted bright blue are the actual robbery ones. So we're good to go there. Can close out of this. I'm going to go ahead and clear this selection. I'm going to turn this layer off. And with that, to make it a bit easier, I'm just going to change the color of the streets. So they're not as similar to it. There we go. So now you can see where we have our robberies in 2018. Now let's turn on our bus stops. So visually, yes, you might be able to say there's some relationship, but you really don't know how many. So if we come up here to our select by location, we can actually specify. We want to select how many robberies are within a certain distance of a bus stop. So if we come up here and we want to change our robbery to example, and our relationship that we're interested for our point data is actually a distance. So within a distance of, and these are pretty cool. I do a lot of just select by locations. So become familiar with these. It's pretty helpful when you're just trying to do quick analyses and get an idea of a potential relationship or something else that you're interested in. Distance and within a distance from the bus stops. Now you might wonder a search distance. Oftentimes people do the average block length to justify a search radius or parameter or distance in general. For now, I'm just going to do a standard 500 feet, so that's just over the average block length in Little Rock. I'll show you how to calculate that in another video when we're getting into breaking up or unionizing all the streets and then breaking them up at intersections. So with that, I'm just going to put 500 here. The data that we're looking at here is already projected in a state plane. You can kind of see that down here based on the coordinates that you're seeing moving around. So with that, if I hit apply, it's selected the ones in the background that are within 500 feet. So if I open the attribute table, you can see 170 out of 259 are within 500 feet. So if we do a quick, my calculator's on my other screen right now, 170 divided by 259, we see that there's about 65-66% of all robberies occur within 500 feet of a bus stop. That's not saying bus stops are the sole reason for that, but at first glance we would expect some type of relationship there. Obviously we need to do more analysis with it, but that's just a quick diagnosis of, does crime occur around bus stops in general? We'll get into it in another one of these videos, and this relates to the analysis tool, buffer, so you can actually make a buffer around each bus stop, and a multiple ring buffer to where you can do multiple distances and see how many, for this case, crimes or anything else is within a certain distance of that. So that's an easy way to do a quick select by location. Another way to do it is, if I want to clear this, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm also going to turn off my bus stops now. I'm going to leave on my robbery, but down here I have my police beats or districts themselves. I'm going to turn off streets just so you can see the boundaries a bit easier. And if I open up this attribute table, you can see they have distinct numbers with it, and these are separated based on a numbering pattern that also identifies the divisions, which we'll do here in another video with that. But say I'm interested in robberies that occur within District 64. So you can see here, when I select it in here, it also selects it in here. So with that, I can do another select by location based on already having something pre-selected. So again, if I do select by location, I don't want to do a new selection in this one. I want to add to the current selection with it. So with that, I want to change this to my robbery, and I want to select that are within. So robbery features that are within our police districts down here. And keep in mind, I'm saying within, adding to the current selection. So hopefully we're only going to see these robbery points in here highlighted. So I've hit apply, and that's what we get. And if you were interested in, well, how many robberies were that? If we open the attribute table for the robberies again, we'll get the count of how many are located within that. Just exit out of that for now. We see 19 out of 259 were located in District 64 in Little Rock. These are just two quick examples of how to select by location. You can use this tool for a number of different reasons, and the functionality is great. I like it. Be familiar with the relationships types. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Two quick examples if you're not needing to do more in-depth analyses with your geoprocessing tools in general. The select by location is a pretty handy one that I use rather commonly in just simple analyses and everything with that. The one caveat or note I have or would say is anytime you do make a selection, before you do any other type of analyses, always clear out. Trust me, I've done it countless times where I run an analysis and do not hit the clear button, so it's only running on a subset of data. Even when I export layers and make new ones, I've done it many times, so I'm just hopefully harping on that a bit more so you take note of it. Alright, well, this is the first video of a series of, but we'll get into some other tools quickly. Alright, now picking up from where we left off, we just got over these select by location examples, but now let's use some of our tools. I'm going to leave on our police beats here. So if I open the attribute table and I highlight some of these, they're not in order. So let me put them in order first. So I'm going to highlight the 40s to 50s. And if you see here, these are actually the ones for the downtown division. Keep in mind these districts and atoms have shifted since I first used this data set, and I used this in a paper with Jeremy Barden when we were looking at police divisions in Little Rock and changes in space and time with crime occurrence within Little Rock based on shift and division. So with that, I might be interested to actually have the downtown division. Then up here we have also the northwest and what's called southwest. Don't ask me why, I've never understood it. But we actually want to have all these just pretty much come together and dissolve these boundaries in between and have a boundary file for each division. Within our analysis tools, we have that option to do so. So with that, there's a couple of different ways that you can do the dissolve function. So you have options within the quick toolbar up here. Where is it? That is a pairwide dissolve, and it opens up over here and can do it that way. There's also, if you just search dissolves in your data management tools, you have the option to dissolve this way too. Key for this one though, we're actually wanting to dissolve into 3 different police divisions. With that, we don't have a unique identifier for each one to identify how we want to separate it. So with that, what I'd recommend in this situation is actually adding a field and then just specifying that break value so you can actually put in the name, or if you want to do a number for it, you can do it that way. So as an example, let's walk through it. So before I get into it too much, going to hit clear. So with that, I'm going to add field and just going to call it division. So we're good to go there. Change it to a text. You'll see why I do that here in a second. Oh, I guess I don't have to do the number format. So we're good there. Click Save at the top. Now the cool part is if you haven't gotten used to the selection part and then updating a field, if I highlight these again, the ones that I want to change, and this is the downtown division. So if I have those highlighted and I right click and I say calculate field, for this one I want it to equal just downtown. So in quotes, and hit apply. And now only the ones that I have selected show up with the downtown part. So I gave it that one. So this is going to allow us, when we dissolve, it's going to dissolve the ones that have downtown, and then we're going to do northwest and southwest. So exit out of here, and I'm just going to do the next selection down, 60s to 70s. And here you see this is the northwest part of Little Rock, the northwest division. Same process, right click on division, and I'm going to hit calculate field. And again, in quotes, northwest. Since this is a text one, so string, the quotes are needed here to specify. So we're good there now. I can close this one and then select our last ones down here, which you can now see is southwest Little Rock. Same part, go in, calculate field, and we're not calculating anything really, we're just naming this field itself. So we can hit apply, and now we have an identifier, an attribute within it that we can use this for. So I'm going to clear my selection, and since we're sticking to some of the analysis tools, I'll hop up here and I'll use the pairwise dissolve. Again, if you didn't know or you want to do another way, if you just click dissolve or type in dissolve, it'll pop up. It's under data management tools. With that, a lot of your other ones are going to fall under your analysis tools, be it proximity with our buffers, our overlays, so how you want to erase, intersect, join, unionize data. A lot of them are going to fall in here if you don't see it in our quick drop menu here. And then also your extract, so your clip, split, and everything with that. A lot of them fall in your toolbox over here with your analysis tools itself. But with that, since we have this option here, let's go ahead and input our police beats. We want to dissolve based on the field we just created, so the division itself. Now the textbook gets into, and we could do multiple fields here, the textbook gets into how to incorporate statistics with it. So with that, we do have an area field for it. This one also has our square mile. So we can add in, we want for our square mile, we want the sum of that. So it's going to keep that for us. After that, we can go ahead and make sure, I almost made the mistake of not saving it to where I knew. So again, keeping it in our geo database. So I'm going to open. And here I'm going to go ahead and say police districts dissolved. Example. A bit longer than my norm, but it gets the point across so I know what it is. With that, I can click run. Give it a second. And now you can see up here we have 3 distinct boundaries. So if I open this attribute table now that we just created, you can see it even did our square mileage for us. And we even keep our division name, downtown, northwest, and southwest. So pretty cool feature within Arc Pro to do a dissolve a couple ways. With that, if you have questions on how to dissolve, let me know. Pretty common one for what we do here within crime analysis type work. You can use dissolve for a number of ones. With that, reach out. Let me know if you would like to see another example. Thanks. Alright, let's keep it rolling. So I'm going to turn off our divisions here. I'm going to turn on the bus routes. The bus routes, obviously, you can see extend well beyond the boundary of Little Rock as a city. With that, it can be problematic. We oftentimes want to use data that's restricted to just the study site we have. With that, we need to essentially clip the data. So we have a boundary file here with Little Rock itself, so we can clip the actual routes itself to the city. There's a couple different ways. Obviously, it's one of the first options here in your tools. If you jumped over to your analysis and did extract, you also have clip here. Same ones. This is kind of just the, since it's oftentimes used. Click Clip, and all we're going to do is insert our feature, this one being our bus routes. We want to clip it based on our boundary file here. It's already saving to our folder or geodatabase for this example. Clip 1 at the end is fine because I know it's just clipped for this example 1. If I click Run, it's going to do that for us. And if I turn off the original bus routes, you can see now that it is clipped to the city boundary. Now there are other ways you can use the clip function or tool itself. It's pretty handy if you're wanting to select, say, streets within a certain census tract, block group. I do that frequently in terms of clipping it just to what you have, or intersect depending on what you want to do. That's a select by location, or you can still use the tool up there for the intersect feature as well. But with that, clipping is one of the easy ones when you have two different layers that you want to clip, one based on the boundary of another. Fairly straightforward. With that, clips, we've done them before. This is just another quick example of using a line file instead of 2 polygons. With that, any questions, let me know. Good, Dave. Last but not least, I want to get into a pretty common tool that is used across different types of research, but what's pretty much just known as a buffer. With that, it's truly you're creating a buffer around, say, a point, a street, another polygon, based on a defined distance. You can do a multiple ring buffer to go out a certain distance and catch them in different catchment areas. It's a pretty common tool if you think about place-based policing and you have a target area where, say, you're putting police resources or just prevention strategies. A typical displacement catchment area is a buffer around that targeted place by police. I'm not going to get into the issues with that, but that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to see if crime's moving, what's going on in that area. Another one is, say you're interested in kind of this hot topic within criminal justice and crime in place. For years has been bars and crime. You can look at the number of crimes within a certain distance, similar to the select by location, but you're creating a buffer around a specific point, line, or polygon again. For this example, I already have pulled up my attribute table for rental units of 2018. I already did descending counts based on the number of units. I was going to go ahead and just pull some of these, and you can see the difference here. Most of them are apartments. There might be a mobile home. Yeah, mobile home pops up here. Now, I could just highlight the ones that I want. I was going to choose the complexes or places that have over 200 units. I could just highlight and go down until I meet the 200 mark. There's another way to do it, and to kind of show you other ways, I'm going to go ahead and do a select by attribute. So with that, I'm going to select my rental units in 2018, and I'm going to select, I want the units or number of units to be greater or equal to 200. Once it's selected, I can save that out as a separate layer itself, and then we're going to create a buffer around those. Give it a second. My computer obviously is being a bit slower this morning. Alright, select by attribute. So with that, I want to use my rental units, and I want a new expression. So I want my rental number of units to be greater than or equal to 200. I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to run that in the background, and then it's going to show us down here how many were selected out of the 5,244. And we have 46. Again, if you want to export this, and I want to have it as its own point layer, I'm going to right click on my rental unit since I selected from this one, jump down to data, and go to export features. With that, it's still saving to my geoprocessing database, and with that, rental units 200 plus. Something that to where you know what it is. I know this language of what I use, so here we go. It's now saving this as a separate layer. And here we go. We can see it generated on the map, and these are now our units. I'm going to clear this out and close the table. You can see our units pop up on our map. I still have the street layer on from the prior video that I did based on kind of a law of crime concentration. So if I turn these off, we can kind of zoom in. A lot of them fall along the river here. Not shocking. There's also a dog park down this way too, where I used to go quite often. So these make sense given what I know about Little Rock itself. But with that, we're now interested in understanding the amount of crime that occurs around these apartment complexes or mobile home parks. Think about higher density itself, more units that way. So with that, if we hop back up to our analysis part, or ribbon up here, so click that tab. Mine's being obviously not responding too well today. It will hop back over though, so I'm not too worried about that. There we go. And now at the top, and you've probably seen it before, we're going to use a buffer. Again, you can go through the toolbox and go on your right hand side over here and go to your toolbox and go to buffer and find and here and go to proximity, and you have buffer. Today we're just going to cover the regular buffer. If you want to do an incremental buffer, that means you want to have multiple reams of your buffer. You can do a multiple one, and we can get into that at a later date if people are really interested in that. The one caveat I would say to that, if you think about having multiple reams in terms of a buffer, you have different areas. So you need to actually calculate the area per that ream of the buffer. If you're wanting to compare or look at it, is there a distance decay, so crime trails off the further we go out, you need to take into account your catchment area itself. So if you want to develop a metric of crimes per square foot or square mile, depending on how large you go, I'd recommend doing something like that. If you have questions, let me know, and I can always create another video pertaining to that. But either way, you can click buffer here or the shortcut one. It's going to open in the same part. Input features, I'm going to go ahead and put my 200 plus rental units. Give it a second and we'll load, and we're going to save it automatically to our Geo database again. And my computer is struggling today with Arc Pro and I have a few things open. But when I go to the Geo database, I'm just going to save this as rental buffer 1 block. Hit save. So you might wonder, well, if I put 1 block there, how do I know what the 1 block distance is? If you remember when I went through the dissolve part of the law of crime concentration video, I showed you how to calculate the statistics for the length part. And if I hop over here to the end, it gives us our length. And when I did the average of this one, so when I right clicked and hit statistics, it'll give you the average. And this one was 409. Watch that video because there are a few issues or limitations of when you do it that way. But with that, I just want to do 1 block, so 409. And I know this is in feet, so I'm going to keep it in feet. And this gives you a couple options of how you want to actually measure that distance. For now, it's okay to use it kind of as planar, the kind of the default with that. But with it, you can go ahead and if you want to get into the geo distance itself, I do recommend reading up on that. The key part here is more so on the dissolve type. So you can see on the map itself that some of these apartment complexes, mobile home rental units itself, are in close proximity to another. When you do not dissolve the buffer, that means you can have overlapping buffers itself. When you do that, that opens the opportunity. Say you created a buffer and you have 2 that are overlapping, kind of like a Venn diagram, and then you have a crime and you wanted to count the crimes per buffer, you can end up double counting crimes. Typically, what's more common is to dissolve your buffer so it's just captured once. Depending on the type of analysis, you might be interested in not dissolving a buffer so you know the true count per establishment, but that also increases some double counting to it. So typically the go-to is a dissolved buffer, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I want to dissolve all. There we go. Oops. Dissolve all. Gonna hit run. And it's pending, taking some time. I'll go ahead and hit pause on the, there we go. It popped up and generated quicker than I thought. So if I zoom in, even though it's being super slow, there we go. You can see here how they're dissolved. So if they were not dissolved, you'd have 3 separate circles overlapping, well, at least 2 of them overlapping each other, but all 3 of these would be overlapping to some extent with one another. That's problematic when you're trying to do crime counts. So if I were to turn on, let's just put on all UCR crime, you can see that there's crime that occurs along the streets, and some of these buffers might pick up or double count some of them. And that's where it becomes problematic. That one's not a great example. This one would be better for it. You can see, depending on the circle itself, if I did not dissolve it, the crime here would end up being double counted. That's problematic when you're trying to look at some of the overall influence of it. So that's where, if you're talking about buffers itself and looking at how much crime occurs around these facilities, in this case a risky facility of apartment complex is pretty common. It's a crime generator or attractor. With that, you can see here the necessity of running a buffer. Again, a cool way, and you can always join again based on my other video that I just did. You can join your points to the buffers itself. So you can do a spatial joining, get a count per buffer. With that, you can also do a simple selection. So if you remember, if we come back and just do select by location, and I want to select all of my crimes that are within my newly created buffer. Where is it? There we go, at the bottom. With that, I don't need a distance or anything else. New selection. And if I open up my attribute table for my all crime, and the 1 block buffers around the rental units that had 200 or more units to them, there were 700 crimes captured within that alone. Keep in mind, I didn't select out based on crime type, and this only goes to September of 2018, but it gives you an idea of how many crimes occur around them and how you can use a buffer to capture that. Keep in mind, if you did a multiple ring, say you wanted to do 2, 3, and 4 blocks, each ring would be after this one. So this one's on 1 block. Circling this, kind of like the halo or donut aspect to it, you would have your second ring and so forth going outwards with that. That's why you need to calculate the area per buffer, because it's going to shift based on how far you go out, your search radius of that. So the distance here was 409. The larger it is, obviously, or smaller it is, the area is going to shift. And you have more opportunity to pick up, capture crime, or find things that are located within it. With that, a pretty straightforward video on just creating buffers. I recommend using dissolved when it comes to it. If you have questions about it, please reach out. If not, take care.